There's a specific kind of silence in the deep woods. No wind, no birds, just the sound of your own breathing. That's when you know something is wrong. 3 hikers, 3 trails, 3 things that happened after the silence started that none of them have ever been able to explain. My name is Rachel. I was 26 when this happened. Solo hiking was my thing. I'd done it 100 times on trails across 5 states. I was not a nervous person in the woods. I knew how to read trail signs, how to track my pace, how to navigate when conditions changed. I was not someone who got turned around. I want to start with that because I need you to understand that what happened on that trail was not a navigation error. It was not fatigue or dehydration or a bad map. I know what those things feel like. This was not any of those things. The trail was in the Smoky Mountains, 7 miles in, 7 miles out. I had done harder routes alone, and I had done them without incident. I started at 7 a.m. with a full pack, good weather, and no reason to expect anything other than a clean out and back. The first 4 miles were perfect. Switchbacks through dense forest, good trail markers, the specific peace that solo hiking gives you when you are deep enough in that the world stops reaching you. I hit mile marker 4 at around 10 a.m. and kept moving. 20 minutes later, I hit mile marker 4 again. I stopped. I looked at it carefully. There was a crack running down the left side of the post, the same crack I had noticed the first time, the same patch of mud at the base. Not a similar marker, the same one. My first thought was that I had unconsciously turned around without realizing it. Fatigue, distraction, some automatic reversal I had not registered consciously. It happens. I checked my compass. I'd been walking north the entire time. The trailhead was south. I had not turned around. I stood at that marker and tried to construct an explanation. I could not build one that held. I turned south and started back toward the trailhead at a brisk pace, counting my steps, watching my compass, staying fully present. 20 minutes later, mile marker 4. The sun was starting to drop behind the ridge, and somewhere behind me I heard footsteps, steady, matching my pace exactly. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I stood completely still for 30 seconds, listening. Nothing. I started walking again. 30 seconds later, the footsteps, again, behind me, matching me step for step. I did not run. Running on a trail you do not trust is how you get hurt. I moved fast. I kept checking my compass, and I kept trying to find the logic of what was happening. Every 20 to 30 minutes, mile marker 4. The same post, the same crack, the same mud. I was covering ground. I was moving consistently in one direction, and I was not leaving that section of trail. I spent 4 hours in that loop. 4 hours on what should have been a 40-minute stretch of trail. The footsteps behind me came and went. They always stopped when I stopped. They never got closer. They never got further away. At dusk, the trail opened up and I hit mile marker 5, then 6, then the trailhead parking lot. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could make myself drive. I've been back to that trail once since then. I stopped at mile marker 3 and turned around. I did not go past it. I do not know what was walking behind me. I do not know what was keeping me at that marker. What I know is this. For 4 hours, on a 7-mile trail, I never got more than a quarter mile from mile marker 4, and I was walking forward the entire time. 4 hours, the same marker, footsteps that stopped when she stopped. Comment below, what do you think was on that trail with Rachel? My name is Jason. I am 31 years old, and I have been hiking the Appalachian Trail in sections for 6 years. I know that trail the way some people know their own neighborhood, the sounds of it, the feel of it, the specific way weather moves through a ridgeline at different elevations. I am not someone who gets rattled by the woods at night. I have done dozens of overnight solo sections. What happened on the Virginia section in early fall changed the way I experience the trail. I still hike it, but I hike it differently now. I was 3 days into a 4-day section, making good time. Camping was legal in that stretch. Weather was holding. I made camp at around 6 p.m. in a flat section about 40 feet off the trail. Standard practice, leave no trace distance. I had a small fire, ate, and was in my tent by 8:30. I woke up at 2 a.m., not from a sound. That is the thing I keep coming back to. I woke up from the absence of sound. The forest had gone completely, totally silent in the way that it almost never does at 2 a.m. No insects, no wind movement, no distant animal sound. That specific quality of held breath that a forest gets when something large is nearby. I lay still and listened. For about 3 minutes, nothing. Then movement. Footsteps on the leaf litter, bipedal. I can tell the difference between an animal moving through undergrowth and a person walking upright. These were upright, 2-point contact, regular interval, deliberate pace, moving slowly through the forest about 20 feet from my tent, moving in a circle around my tent, not coming closer, not moving away. A slow, patient circle. I watched the walls of my tent in the dark, tracking the sound. Full circuit around the perimeter, then another, then another. I had my knife out. My phone had no signal. 3 days into a remote section of the AT, that was expected. I lay completely still and listened to whatever was outside circle my tent for 40 minutes. Then it stopped. No retreating footsteps, no movement away from the site. It just stopped. One moment it was there, and the next, the sound was gone. And 30 seconds after it stopped, the forest sounds came back. Insects, wind, the normal night returning all at once, like someone had turned a dial. In the morning, I checked the perimeter of my campsite. There were boot prints in the soft soil on the north side of the tent. Adult, large, deep impression facing the tent. Not a full circle of prints, just that one section of ground on the north side where, whoever it was, had stopped and stood. Stood facing my tent in the dark while I was inside. The prints were facing in, not passing through. Not the prints of someone who had walked by and paused. Whoever made them had stopped deliberately and stood there for an unknown amount of time before moving on. I hiked out that day instead of completing the section. I reported it to the ranger station at the next road crossing. They took my information. I have heard nothing since. I still hike the AT, but I no longer camp alone on it. Whatever was outside my tent that night was not curious. Curious things approach. This thing circled. This thing stood still facing my tent in the dark. That is not curiosity. That is something else, and I have never been able to name what it was. Boot prints facing his tent. 40 minutes of circling in complete silence. Subscribe right now if you are not already here. Story 3. A park ranger. 15 years on the trail and the one night he has never filed a report about. My name is Daniel. I have been a park ranger for 15 years in the Appalachian region. I have worked search and rescue. I have recovered people who did not survive the mountain. I have done night patrols alone on trails that most visitors would not walk in daylight. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand the kind of person who is about to tell you this story. I have never filed a formal report about what happened on the night of September 14th. I've thought about why many times. The honest answer is that I do not know how to write it in a way that would be believed, and I'm not sure it would help anyone if it were. It started as a routine patrol. I cover a 12-mile stretch of trail on rotation, checking camps, clearing debris, logging trail conditions. I do it at night once a month.
I know that trail at night the way you know a room in your own house in the dark. I do not need a light for most of it. My feet know where the roots are. I was at the 7-mile marker when I heard someone call for help. Clear voice, female, from off-trail, east side, maybe 60 to 80 meters into the forest. Calm enough that I thought at first it was not an emergency, more like someone who had gotten a bit lost and was calling out to see if anyone was on the trail. I responded. I told her I was a ranger. I was coming to keep calling so I could locate her. She kept calling. I moved toward the voice. For 20 minutes, I moved toward that voice, and it stayed exactly the same distance away from me, not moving, not getting closer as I approached. I know that forest. I know the terrain, and I know how sound carries through it. I was moving directly toward the source, and the distance was not closing. I stopped. I called out again. She called back. Same distance, same direction, same clear, calm voice asking for help. I am trained for night rescues. I know how disorientation and acoustics work in dense forest. I know every rational explanation for misdirection in low-light terrain. I ran through all of them. None of them explained why a stationary voice that I was moving directly toward was maintaining a constant 60 to 80 meter distance. I stopped moving toward it. I stood still, and I called out one more time, identifying myself as a ranger, telling her to activate any emergency device she had and stay where she was. The voice stopped. Complete silence. No response. No movement. No other sound. I waited 10 minutes. Then I went back to the trail and completed my patrol. I have thought about this every rotation since. I have asked colleagues if they have experienced similar things on night patrols. 2 of them have said yes. Different trails, different voices, same behavior. The voice that stays the same distance no matter how far you walk toward it. None of us have filed reports. What I know from 15 years on this trail is that there are sounds in these mountains that do not have explanations. Most of them are harmless. Most of them I have learned to categorize and move past. This one, I have not been able to categorize. And the reason I do not go off-trail toward that voice anymore is because one night I will get close enough to find out what is making it, and I do not want to know what that is. A voice that stayed exactly the same distance no matter how far he walked toward it. A ranger with 15 years on the trail, and 2 colleagues who experienced the exact same thing. Comment below. What do you think was calling from those woods? Rachel spent 4 hours on a 40-minute stretch of trail and never got more than a quarter mile from the same marker. Jason woke up to 40 minutes of something circling his tent and found boot prints facing in. Daniel spent 20 minutes walking toward a voice that never got closer. 3 trails, 3 accounts. None of them filed. None of them explained. If you have had something happen to you out there, on a trail, in the woods, after dark, send it to us. The link is in the description. And if you are hiking alone this weekend, maybe don't. Some trails don't let you leave the same way you entered. I'm Obscure Nights. Stay safe out there. Stay